Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 76 of the Church Revitalization Podcast, and I'm back with you as I always am. My name's AJ, and over there is Scott, and we're excited to have our buddy Bo Patterson joining us today. Bo is a member of our TMG team. He's one of our church guides, and he's also the Next Step pastor at Lake Point Church, and he was back on episode 55 as well, talking about growing small groups. So welcome back, Bo.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I love being on the podcast. I was scared y'all weren't going to invite me back, but you have, and I'm here. And I love talking about church work. Love talking about leadership. Love talking about volunteers. So I'm really excited for today because it's an idea that just sank in my heart, and now I use it wherever I go, and I want to bless others with it too.
Well, that's awesome, and that's why we like having you on the team and on the podcast. So that's your complete validation that you're back right for a second visit.
Got it.
Our title today is, I'm sure some people are like, all right, they wanted to listen because they wanted to find out how quickly they could be angry at us and then turn us off. And I hope that won't be the case. I think they'll like it. It's not clickbait, but we've called this now 3 strategies for improving team performance. Stop training your leaders. Right. And they've heard us talk about training before on the podcast. So we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper here pretty soon. And what we're going to lay out today are 3 good things for improving team performance and 3 things that are shown to be less effective in team performance. Bo, set us up a little bit and kind of where you got this from. Comes out of a book, and then a little bit about how we're gonna frame this in the space of our churches.
Yeah, you got it. So actually, my cousin works for Apple. They're a small company who make phones and computers and different things like that. So I was talking to her about, hey, I really want to train my church volunteers better, and I want to train my leaders and all these sort of very, just volunteer, and you're literally giving above and beyond to help help when you're off of work. And so how do I help these people do the best they can? And she said, well, this is what we use at Apple. And it's actually a book called Training Ain't Performance. And you heard it right. It's ain't. It's not isn't.
Must be written by a Texan.
I know, right? And so Training Ain't Performance is just the idea that so many organizations, statistically speaking, organizations try to solve their problems with training. 80% of the time, if a company has a problem, they are going to try to solve it with some sort of meeting, some sort of huddle, some sort of rally where they can get all the people together in a room and they can just tell those people what they're doing wrong and say, this is the new way of doing it. And as churches, we still do the same thing. And I can't tell you how many times I've been to church and they'll say, well, let's just do a training. Let's just do a training. And let's just do a training. And the book really walks you through, and these principles we're going to talk about today show you that's probably not the right answer. And you should probably stop training your leaders. They're overly trained, and they should probably just start getting to work. So that's where all these 6 principles come in, 3 that will actually work and 3 that might not so much. So the first 3, when managerial studies were done, what they found is of these 6, 3 can actually be changed by you. So if you're a pastor, if you're a leader, if you're a coach, or you have volunteers who are under you, you can't change everything about a person. But the external things that can be changed, the environment in which somebody comes into your church, or the environment in which they go into a break room that you've set up for leaders to get their resources, these things will affect and can be affected by you and will nurture and really encourage performance. The last 3, internal, you can't ever change. No matter how much we see that somebody's struggling, some of these things, they have to make that decision on their own. So you're kind of wasting your time if you're focusing on the last 3. You should really focus on the first 3.
interesting parallels we could dive into on a separate episode on discipleship, individual discipleship. I mean, there's only so much we can do as a church, developing
Right.
structures and systems, but there's still the work of the individual. And okay, but I don't want to get us sidetracked.
All right. So we said that there's 3 external and there's 3 internal. So let me talk about the 3 internal, the things that we as supervisors, as pastors and leaders try to affect, but you really can't. And there are 3 things that only the individual can. These are the worst ways to try to build performance from your team or from someone in particular. So the absolute worst way is to try to ever change someone is to change their motivation. That's just an internal thing. If they're not excited to be on your team, if they're not excited to be at your church, that's a cultural chemistry issue.
Hmm.
And don't go do a ropes course. Just give them the boot, all right, or whatever it takes. Like, you need a team of people who want to be there and who are motivated. And I know there's a lot of other sweet ways to help someone. I'm just going to tell you right now, statistically, business have found you can't change that. That's something internal. That's something that's a part of their heart.
Hmm.
The second thing, which is interesting, is capacity. Some people just don't have the capacity to do what you're asking them to do. Maybe they're busy at work and it's tax season and they're an accountant. Maybe their marriage is in trouble and you can't go fix it and they can't give you the time to do it. So you have to understand you're not going to be able to fix that. And if it's a capacity issue, you might need to go a different way. And the final way that's been documented as just a terrible way to actually improve performance is training, right? That's what we said. It works 15% of the time. And I think the reason why is just because people are smart. People can figure it out. If you ask them to work a station, to talk to a volunteer, more than likely they can figure that out. They're not dummies. They can think through it and they can process. And typically our trainings just aren't that good, if I could say that. We aren't really that good at training. So when we have one, it's no wonder it doesn't get the job done.
You know, that's interesting. The one church where I was on staff, we moved into a new facility and had all this new equipment. And so I kind of had it in my brain that I was the only person who could run some of this equipment. That lasted for about a month and a half. And then I was about to be totally burned out. And so I finally was like, I got to pass the reins off to somebody. And at that point, I was so tired. I kind of stumbled into this, Bo. I had a girl, a college student. It was a girl who stepped up and said, I'll help. And I was so brain dead and tired that I was like, here's kind of what I do. And spent about 10 minutes showing her what it is I was doing on that equipment. And to your point, Bo, within 2 weeks, she was doing it much more efficiently. She had new ways of doing things and the end result was the same, but she had different processes for how to do it. And she didn't need my help. She figured it out. I think you're right. Maybe we don't give people enough credit.
Well, and training does work if you're given a youth minister, a team of youth, and they have to go tear down a house and you need to teach a 13-year-old how to use a chainsaw. Okay, a little bit of training there might help,
Point 1, don't give a 13-year-old a chainsaw.
Hey, man. And so, sometimes, a little training goes a long way. Like if no one's ever done this before, this is completely out of their wheelhouse, give them a little training. It's probably best to do some one-on-one training, right? You don't need to get everyone together and teach them what a chainsaw is. And the history and who made it and why they call it a chain and why they call it a saw. It's all these things that we do don't really help someone. The 3 that I'm most excited for are the ones that work. And so if we're going to keep going up, you want to keep going up the ladder on effectiveness?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's go to.
Yeah, we'll finish big.
3, 2, 1. Yeah,
big
great.
finish, right?
Let's point out, sorry, just for the small minority of people that are going to go, Malphus Group just said never train people. Right. There's a time and place for training. There's, initial training for somebody in a new position, or you got a new piece of software, and we do need to, let's get the team up to speed. We're talking like ongoing, over and over and over, gather everybody together. And that's not the most effective way to improve performance. It is a way of imparting knowledge when needed. But we're talking about ongoing team performance. And so now we're going to move into what you would better be served when you spend your time in these next three things?
Yes, exactly. And so if you remember these next three things, they're external. So where the other three things, you might be done with the training and you think, man, I did such a good job. And they go home and go, I have no idea what that guy talked about. Like he was using church vernacular. He was using all these words. He said the church database 3 times. I don't even know what that's called. Like, I don't even have access to that. I just am lost. That's an internal thing that they have to actually get your training. So these 3 external things you can change today. And I'll tell you this, you could do all 3 of these things today, and by Sunday, you will have seen an improvement across the board in your leaders and volunteers. So the 3rd best way, the 4th worst way, now we're going to just say the 3rd best way, all right? So the 3rd best way to do it is incentives and consequences. That is making a big deal when people do things well. When a team member is doing awesome, that's when you want to honor moment. And you want to say, I want to thank Mary Armstrong for doing the greeter ministry. And I love how she calls her people every week. She doesn't just email them, and how she checks on them when they're sick, and she lets me know so I can go visit them. That's an honor incentive moment that really helps people. And the opposite to that is a consequence. Sometimes you just have to be straight. When in ministry, telling the truth is kindness. And so when we tell somebody the truth, this isn't going well, and I might have to remove you from this volunteer spot, that will help them know if they're performing or not. And by being clear, you're helping them out.
Yeah, that's tough, I think, for a lot of pastors with volunteers. They especially in, well, I was going to say in smaller churches. It's true in every size church, I think, where you're always maybe just a little behind on the number of volunteers you'd like to have. And so you generally don't want to be in the business of running off the volunteers you do have.
You don't want to
But
fire your volunteer, right?
yeah, but I think this goes back to proper placement in the first place, right? Like, let's not, I mean, if the way in which we're recruiting volunteers is guilting people into signing up, and then they end up volunteering somewhere that they're not gifted for, they don't have a passion for it. I think that speaks to the motivation component, right? Like if they don't have, there's nothing in them that's motivated to do it, then they're more likely to not perform well, and you're going to have these hard conversations more frequently, I think. So getting people in the right place from the beginning, it seems like, would make it less likely that you have to have hard conversations. Something we just talked about in last week's episode, or maybe not last week, a few weeks ago, Bo, is increasing the frequency of feedback
Yep,
makes the intensity of it less severe.
exactly.
So if you're getting feedback, positive and difficult feedback on a regular basis, it doesn't feel as bad.
Yeah.
Do you see that with your volunteers? Like if you only ever check in with them a couple of times,
Yeah.
and it's hard conversations, they're probably not going to want to stick around in the ministry. But if you're regularly giving feedback to them, it maybe isn't as hard to hear a hard thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I try, and what I often do, because you can't do it all, is I often try to recruit a leader of volunteers, and then I try to model it to that leader so that they'll do it for theirs. But I'll bring them a gift card. I'll say, great job, you're doing well. I'll take them to lunch and then just say, hey, I think there's some areas we can improve. Let's just be honest about it. There's no shame here. And if we don't improve this, then I might have to get you a co-leader to help out. And maybe that's the answer. But it's just honest feedback. And so I've never had somebody walk up from lunch because they're mad, because we're always doing it together. We're sharing our heart. But it's a constant. I'm weird in that I try to talk to all of my leaders every week. And so what I do is I carve out time every Sunday at church to walk around and just say hi and just check in. And even if it's just saying their name, I just want to make sure there's a connection. And then when I can, I'll figure out who needs feedback on which weekends, so that when I do need to have a lunch or when I do need to have an office meeting, it feels very normal and we already have that relationship. to stand on. So incentives and consequences don't have to be scary. In the business world, the consequence, hey, you're going to get fired. An incentive, you're going to get a raise. Well, we can't really do that in the church world, but we can be creative and we can honor people and we can be very truthful. And by doing that, you will actually help someone do their role better.
On that note, though, I do want to say we should be doing that in the church world when it comes to our staff. I find a lot of times, I've worked with several churches where there were some people who probably needed to be fired because they weren't effective in their jobs at all.
Yeah.
And there were no incentive, but there were no incentives either. I mean, there weren't opportunities for things to get better, but they weren't going to get punished either. And so the ministries under them suffered. So I don't think anybody does. It's not serving a staff person well for there to be no incentives and no consequences.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If
I love
everybody
what you
gets treated the
said.
same, what's the point? Yeah.
I love what you said, that in ministry, telling the truth is kindness. And so many times with the best of intentions, leaders choose not to have tough conversations, feeling like it would be unkind, but it's not. It does not pay off in the long run. So I think that's a super important point for ministry leaders.
And to your point about my point, if you finally have the conversation, you say, hey, I'm going to have to ask you to step down. Well, what do you mean? I thought everything was great. I thought you said I've been doing well. And it feels worse when you have that conversation.
Yeah. That would feel like a betrayal. I mean, a lot of people would think, how come I haven't heard about this until now?
Exactly.
So yeah.
Okay, so the second best way to help somebody, and I default to this way probably because I'm a old millennial, because this is how our generation tries to fix problems. I love that it's the second best way to help somebody with performance, but it's tools and resources. If you can get somebody the tool to actually do what you ask them to do, to make sure that the tool is constantly working for them, that a resource is available in case they need it, then you are going to help them perform and feel like a success because they have the ability to do what you ask them to do, which is, hey, people, we all want to please each other, and that's good to a point, but a tool or resource could be huge. I recently hired an associate to help me in my role, and there was a couple of days there where she didn't have a computer, she didn't have a phone, and she didn't have a badge to get into the church, right? Because we have badges, or whatever that is. You can make up your own mind on
safe. Yeah, safe.
Yeah, safe. That's the word. Yeah, we're safe. And so she was literally having to work off my computer, bum off free internet from Panera or something, because we didn't have the tools or resources for her to do her job. Now that might go, okay, well, but I don't hire many people, but your volunteer might just need a tool. Maybe if you had a postcard that had the 3 things you want them to do, or even a business card that had the 3 things and had steps, and even the website or whatever, the password for them to log in, and you gave that to them, now they don't have to remember it. That's a tool or a resource they keep in their wallet in order to do their job and to remember it themselves. There's a lot of little fun ways there. I don't know if y'all have any fun ways of trying to think about resources, or maybe a time in ministry where all you needed was a tool or resource to do something. But I'd love to hear, because I think that's a creative way to help people get the job done.
Well, we were talking off air. For me, Planning Center revolutionized my ministry, right? Like I used to have to try to keep track of my volunteers' schedules in a notebook and write it down and try to remember when they were going to be out of town, or they might have told me on Sunday morning, hey, I'm going to be out of town in 2 weeks. And then by the time I made it back to my office, I don't remember that. So, and then I schedule them and they're like, I told you I was going to be out of town, and they're irritated. So just having that tool to schedule them, they could block off dates, they could reject, a time I scheduled them, they could replace themselves. I mean, that's game changing when a volunteer can replace themselves on the schedule. They know they're going to be out of town, they can swap with somebody. I mean, it's not understating it to say that it saved me from burnout, or at least delayed burnout in my life for a while, because volunteer scheduling was a beast for me. And I think it is for a lot of people, especially in children's ministry and worship ministry and things like that. Or for First Impressions, where you have a bunch of greeters you got to schedule. It's just really helpful to have a tool.
Yeah.
I can think of lots of examples. I'm a tool guy myself, or even just thinking about us, what we do, Bo, in terms of strategic envisioning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a realization that we had years ago, was that it wasn't enough to train churches in mission, in discipleship pathway, in vision. We needed really good tools that empowered them to work on their mission, to build their discipleship pathway, to evaluate ministries. And that's my favorite thing. And maybe we're the same age, Bo. So it's my default too. It's like, if I see a problem, I want to build a tool to fix it.
I can't tell you how many teacher trainings I went to where it was just really good, encouraging words on how to teach the Bible. And I would hear it and I go, man, I need to be better. And I wouldn't do anything with it. Like, okay, you trained me and I felt good about myself, but I just, I'm still working through it. And then I had teachers who would say, actually do these 4 W's or do these 3 B's, because they're always alliterated or something like that. But it always came out to observation, interpretation, and application. And when I had those 3 letters in my mind, and then I remembered that acronym, and then I remembered how to do it, my teaching excelled because I was given structure and I was giving a way and a proven way of how to tackle a problem, and not just left to my own, hey, just do a good job, right? That's what most onboarding looks like for volunteers is, hey, thanks for doing this. Do a great job. See you later. And they don't have the tool. They don't have the resource to go back to get the job done. Mm-hmm. Y'all ready for the number 1? This is like,
lay it on us.
The David Letterman number 1 thing. The number 1 way to increase performance. And what's cool is if you put all 3 of the external ways together, they equal a 75% chance you will make a difference in helping someone with their performance. 75% of the time, if you do incentives and consequences, tools and resources, and you have good information, then you will see a change and a difference. Sometimes you can say good communication, it's good information, and it needs to be a constant. It's not a, hey, we're going to have a quarterly training, because you communicate at trainings, but if every week you just check in, you're saying hi, do you need anything, asking more questions than giving answers, you will elicit problems. You will find out hurdles and barriers to the thing that's keeping somebody from succeeding. And so just by communicating, by listening, communicating is more listening when I say this, and then giving them the right, hey, remember that tool I gave you? Oh yeah, I remember that tool. I lost it. Okay, I'll get you another one. Yeah, I lost it like 3 months ago and I've been meaning to ask you. Okay, well, all right. You don't need another training. You just need to communicate with me. And good communication and effective information is by far the number 1 way. Another good way is the E word, it's expectations. So many times a volunteer just needs clear expectations. What did you want me to do again? And when was it? And who am I supposed to talk to? Some people, and I had someone say this week, why am I doing that? Why did you ask me to call these volunteers? And then I actually had to, I guess I have to explain to him again, but it was really good because once he got the why, that dude was off. And he just needed clear information at the time he needed it, not the time, well, I'll tell you in 3 weeks at our next quarterly training, So good communication, information, tools, resources, incentives, and consequences are the top 3 ways that you're going to increase performance and that you can actually have a chance of making an impact on a volunteer or leader.
It's so true. That communication and effective communication is often lacking. And I think that I think we've all been in this situation where, Bo, you send me an email or a message or something, and I didn't respond right away because I was distracted by something else. And then it's the next day. And so then I have to think, oh, has it been too long to reply to that? Which of course the answer is no. At any time, just respond, but then you kind of do this mental gymnastics of, oh, now it's been too long, and then I don't want to lie and say this, I didn't see it, whatever. And then before you know it, it's been 3 months and you needed that tool and you lost it or whatever, and then you're upset because you never responded. Like, there's so much of that, I think, that is it's just relationship and
Right. Yeah.
shame and fear and all of that. And I think as leaders, we have to kind of go the extra mile. So if someone doesn't respond to something, we can't do the mental gymnastics of, well, what's their deal? Why won't they reply to me? Make an assumption that there's something up, or that they're really busy or swamped, or that maybe they've got an issue going on at home, and it's a pastoral moment to go, hey, what's up? Hey, I sent you a message. You don't worry that you didn't reply to it right away, but I just want to check in with you and see how things are going. I still need this thing from you, but I just want to make sure you're doing okay. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like pastors and leaders sometimes do the tango too. They don't want to follow up. They don't want to send the reminder. They don't want to, because they don't want to seem aggressive. But that doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, just think about, for the listeners and the viewers, think about a problem you have, and not just like my whole church is a problem, right? Like, no, like think of like a specific problem. Like, oh man, all the deacons are the worst or something. Like, think about a ministry that you think, I wish that was better. And have you clearly communicated your expectations to every single person there, what you want to do? And have you said, hey, for 8 weeks, I'm going to send you an email with a tool or resource or an honor moment. And you just tell yourself that for this team, and we're going to get you whatever tools you need and resources. It's just going to be once a week. I'm going to do this, but we want this team to go from a zero to hero. You could probably succeed and do a little bit over 8 weeks, then call everybody together. Half will show up for a training, and then record it, and then put it online for nobody to watch. Or you can just help them succeed where they might feel lost and they might feel like they're wayward. They don't really know what a win is. All they wish is that they wish they had more communication, more ways to do what's been asked, and they want to know if they're winning. I'll share with y'all a perfect example in the past month that I've been working in this role. We found out that, so weird to say this, we found out that people were coming forward wanting to get baptized, and I did some metrics. I'm a metrics guy. So what I found that around 28% of the people who said they wanted to get baptized actually got baptized. Does that make sense? It's a pretty simple metric, right? Somebody comes down in front to your church and says, I want to get baptized. That person ever get baptized? Like, did we follow up with them? Did we get them in the water? And it's never going to be 100% because, stuff, fallen world, Genesis 2, right? Maybe 3. And
3. We'll go with 3.
2 was pretty good.
Okay. I know you've been to seminary. It's all right.
Yeah. And then there was the First World War where Adam and Eve fought. And so in the garden. But where are we talking about baptisms? Okay, so what I found out is that the people who were asked to follow up with baptisms, they already had a busy schedule. Their capacity was low, and training wasn't going to fix it. Me walking in their office and yelling wasn't going to fix it. Me calling that leader and saying, you failed me for the last time, wasn't going to fix it. It's a Darth Vader quote. Telling them how to use a phone and giving them a second phone wasn't going to fix it. It was a capacity issue. I could not fix it. And so we recruited a whole team of volunteers, and we said, if you have a passion of talking with someone about Jesus, please let me know. We got a whole team together, and I said clear expectations of what I wanted to do. I gave them a tool, and I honored the people who were killing it. And what we found is it jumped from 28% in 1 month to 48% of people who came forward wanting to get baptized actually getting baptized. Now we've made more tweaks. We've done more communication. We've fixed and we've made more adjustments to the tools. We've honored, I just took my key leader out to lunch last week, and we celebrated how awesome they were doing. And I'm hoping to see that just grow and grow and grow. And I actually am not responsible for it. Volunteers are. People who have a passion for it. But I could have had a training. I could have pulled everybody in a room, could have told somebody what baptismo means in the Greek, and walked them through what water looks like. But at the end of the day, they just needed clear expectations, tools, and attaboys, and they got after it. So we can do this fairly simply if we trust our people and we equip them well to do the work of the ministry.
It's a culture shift. Good communication. I think the great thing about this point is that it's easily fixable, because there's tons of great tips out there for improving communication. And if you employ even a few really simple things, and then you execute that over not even a long period of time, you begin to change the culture of communication in your organization. And once the culture begins to change, in which people know I can talk with, whoever my supervisor is, or the other people on my team, that we can work through problems together, that, I'm not going to be in trouble for everything that goes wrong, and all this healthy things that can be done. Man, once that culture really begins to take root, it's a game changer, and unquantifiable improvement in the way things get done and how effective they are. So I love that
what's crazy
about communication.
is that it's not complicated.
Yeah.
We just mostly don't do it. Right? When you get an email, reply to it the day that you get it. If you're going to decide, like you talked about, Bo, over the course of the 8 weeks, I'm going to send an email that's going to give you tools or whatever. So then actually do that.
Yeah.
Send an email every week. But most of the time, the breakdown is we just quit. We don't reply on time. We don't, we said we were going to send emails for once a week for 8 weeks, and we didn't. It's just failure to execute the most basic things. And I don't know that it's really complicated to have good communication.
Yeah.
It just takes a commitment.
Well,
and going back to motivation, on the part of a leader, you have to be motivated to want to see your teams thrive. If you do, you'll put in the communication work. If you don't really care, you're not going to do it. And that's a hard talk about hard conversations. I'm convinced, Bo, and I don't know, you've been in ministry a long time too. I think some leaders just don't care whether or not their teams thrive. And this podcast isn't going to fix that.
Nope, that's internal.
Yep.
Yeah. We can plug back in episode 68, Clarity Drives Ministry. There's a couple of good tips in there for improving your communication. So go back and check that one out too.
Well,
Bo, this is a great topic,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you bringing this up. Bo's going to be writing an article on this same topic, which you'll be able to read. Where will people find that, AJ?
They will find that at malfersgroup.com/76. And we don't even need to speak about it in future tense, Scott, because right now
It's live. That's right. Yes, through the magic of time, it's already been written.
It is there and ready for your reading. Pass it on to your friends, because we would love to see not only your church improve, but everyone's church improve. Bo, thanks for being with us today.
You got it. Thank you guys for having me.
And we'll be back with you next week with another fresh topic. Thanks for listening to the Church Revitalization Podcast.